Yeah. Someone is up. Can't sleep. Is it all the noise outside? You used to like that white noise, remember? Well, I was just reading Henry David Thoreau, Walden and Civil Disobedience. This is my current favorite book of all time right now. And I was so happy to discover it. You know how much I'm very into minimalism and simplicity, and this book basically just embodies that. It's about really waking up and taking into perspective what has really become important in our lives. There's so many advancements already. Do we value more materialism? Excuse my tummy. Or a life of virtue and simplicity? Probably more than that, of course, but I was in this neighborhood called Campbell, and they have this used bookstore, and I found this book for such a great price, and like, it's so soft already. It's been well loved and used, and so I just had to get it. It's just the perfect book. Would you like me to just read it to you? Maybe it'll help you sleep. Yeah? Sure. I'm sorry you weren't cozy enough. Okay, why don't you get cozy there? Relax for a second. Squeeze all your muscles. Squeeze. And let go. Just get comfy. Just get comfy. My sweater says, stay wild. You comfy? Okay. Alright, we'll start. I'm just gonna skip through to like my favorite paragraphs, okay? And maybe you'll take an interest from it. Okay. And now speak a little louder so you can hear me. Alright? Walden by Henry David Thoreau. A Penguin classic. I do not propose to write an ode to dejection, but to brag as lustily as Chanticleer in the morning, standing on his roost, if only to wake my neighbors up. First chapter is called Economy. It's okay to sleep now. It's perfectly alright. When I wrote the following pages, or rather the bulk of them, I lived alone in the woods, a mile from any neighbor, in a house which I had built myself on the shore of Walden Pond in Concord, Massachusetts, and earned my living by the labor of my hands only. I lived there 2 years and 2 months. At present, I am a sojourner in civilized life again. So I think after the independence, he decides to just go to this random pond, Walden Pond, by his home in Concord. And he just decides to build his own home and lives there for 2.5 years and just lives very simply and just thinks about what's really important in life, what's come about life, all our needs met, and where to go from here, because he really believed that what our founding fathers, or the American founding fathers, had planned more for us, more for the future generations, than to just value materials. Because there's been our people and ancestors before us have laid out so much to make life really good. So it just begs the question, where to now? What do we value now? So he wrote this book out there for 2.5 years. Isn't that cool? I wouldn't really do that, but I really appreciate thinking about my values in life. So I thought this was a great place to start. I should not obtrude my affairs so much on the notice of my readers, if very particular inquiries had not been made by my townsmen concerning my mode of life, which some would call impertinent, though they do not appear to me at all impertinent, but considering the circumstances, very natural and pertinent. Some have asked what I got to eat, if I did not feel lonesome, if I was not afraid, and the like. Others have been curious to learn what portion of my income I devoted to charitable purposes, and some who have large families, how many poor children I maintained. I will therefore ask those of my readers who feel no particular interest in me to pardon me if I undertake to answer some of these questions in this book. In most books, the I, or first person, is omitted. In this, it will be retained that, in respect to egotism, is the main difference. We commonly do not remember that it is, after all, always the first person that is speaking. I should not talk so much about myself if there were anybody else whom I knew as well. Unfortunately, I am confined to this theme by the narrowness of my experience. Moreover, I, on my side, require of every writer, first or last, a simple and sincere account of his own life, and not merely what he has heard of other men's lives. Some such account as he would send to his kindred from a distant land, for if he has lived sincerely, it must have been in a distant land to me. Perhaps these pages are more particularly addressed to poor students. As for the rest of my readers, they will accept such portions as apply to them. I trust that none will stretch the seams in putting on the coat, for it may do good service to him whom it fits. I'm just skipping a giant paragraph. I see young men, my townsmen, whose misfortune it is to have inherited farms, houses, barns, cattle, and farming tools, for these are more easily acquired than got rid of. Better if they had been born in the open pasture and suckled by a wolf, that they might have seen with clear eyes what field they were called to labor in. Who made them serfs of the soil? Why should they eat their 60 acres when man is condemned to eat only his peck of dirt? Why should they begin digging their graves as soon as they are born? They have got to live a man's life, pushing all these things before them, and get on as well as they can. How many a poor immortal soul have I met well nigh crushed and smothered under its load, creeping down the road of life, pushing before it a barn 75 feet by 40 in Aegean stables, never cleansed, and 100 acres of land, tillage, mowing, pasture, and woodlot. The portionless, who struggle with no such unnecessary inherited encumbrances, find it labor enough to subdue and cultivate a few cubic feet of flesh. This is interesting. But men labor under a mistake. The better part of the man is soon plowed into the soil for compost by a seeming fate commonly called necessity. They are employed, as it says in an old book, laying up treasures which moths and rust will corrupt and thieves break through and steal. It is a fool's life, as they find when they get to the end of it, if not before. It is said that Deucalion and Pyrrha created men by throwing stones over their heads behind them. Let's close this drawer of mine. Raleigh rhymes in its sonorous way. From thence our kind hard-hearted is, enduring pain and care, approving that our bodies of a stony nature are. So much for a blind obedience to a blundering oracle, throwing the stones over their heads behind them, and not seeing where they fell. Most men, even in this comparatively free country, through mere ignorance and mistake, are so occupied with the factitious cares and superfluously coarse labors of life that its finer fruits cannot be plucked by them. Their fingers from excessive toil are too clumsy and tremble too much for that. Actually, the laboring man has not leisure for a true integrity day by day. He cannot afford to sustain the manliest relations to men. His labor would be depreciated in the market. He has no time to be anything but a machine. How can he remember well his ignorance, which his growth requires? Who has so often to use his knowledge? We should feed and clothe him gratuitously sometimes, and recruit him with our cordials before we judge him. The finest qualities of our nature, like the bloom on fruits, can be preserved only by the most delicate handling. Yet we do not treat ourselves nor one another thus tenderly. Some of you, we all know, are poor, find it hard to live, are sometimes, as it were, gasping for breath. I have no doubt that some of you who read this book are unable to pay for all the dinners which you have actually eaten, or for the coats and shoes which are fast wearing or are already worn out, and have come to this page to spend borrowed or stolen time robbing your creditors of an hour. It is very evident what mean and sneaking lives many of you live, for my sight has been whetted by experience. Always on the limits, trying to get into business and trying to get out of debt, a very ancient slough called by the Latins es alienum, another's brass, for some of their coins were made of brass, still living and dying, and buried by this other's brass, always promising to pay tomorrow, and dying today, insolvent, seeking to curry favor, to get custom by how many modes, not only state prison offenses, lying, flattering, voting, contracting yourselves, in a nutshell of civility, or dilating into an atmosphere of thin and vaporous generosity, that you may persuade your neighbor to let you make his shoes, or his hat, or his coat, or his carriage, or import his groceries for him, making yourself sick, that you may lay up something against a sick day, something to be tucked away in an old chest, or in a stocking behind the plastering, or more safely in the brick bank, no matter where, no matter how much or how little. Okay, I'm just gonna read this part to you, and I hope no one takes offense in it, but I just thought it was interesting. I sometimes wonder that we can be so frivolous. I may almost say, as to attend to the gross but somewhat foreign form of servitude called slavery. There are so many keen and subtle masters that enslave both North and South. It is hard to have a Southern overseer. It is worse to have a Northern one. But worst of all, when you are the slave driver of yourself. Talk of a divinity in man. Okay. Alright, I skipped a couple pages, or paragraphs. The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. What is called resignation is confirmed desperation. From the desperate city you go into, the desperate country, and have to console yourself with the bravery of minks and muskrats. A stereotyped but conscious despair is concealed even under what are called the games and amusements of mankind. There is no play in them, for this comes after work. But it is characteristic of wisdom not to do desperate things. When we consider that to use the words of the Catechism is the chief end of man, and what are the true necessaries and means of life? It appears as if men had deliberately chosen the common mode of living because they preferred it to any other. Yet they honestly think there is no choice left. But alert and healthy natures remember that the sun rose clear. It is never too late to give up our prejudices. No way of thinking or doing, however ancient, can be trusted without proof. What every body echoes or in silence passes by as true today may turn out to be falsehood tomorrow. Mere smoke of opinion which some had trusted for a cloud that would sprinkle fertilizing rain on their fields. What old people say you cannot do, you try and find that you can. Old deeds for old people, and new deeds for new. Old people did not know enough once, perchance, to fetch fresh fuel to keep the fire a-going. New people put a little dry wood under a pot and are whirled around the globe with the speed of birds and a way to kill old people, as the phrase is. Age is no better, hardly so well, qualified for an instructor as youth, for has not profited so much as it has lost. One may almost doubt if the wisest man had learned anything of absolute value by living. Practically, the old have no very important advice to give the young. Their own experience had been so partial, and their lives have been such miserable failures, for private reasons as they must believe, and it may be that they have some faith left which belies that experience, and they are only less young than they were. I have lived some 30 years on this planet, and I have yet to hear the first syllable of valuable or even earnest advice from my seniors. They have told me nothing, and probably cannot tell me anything to the purpose. Here is life, an experiment to a great extent, untried by me, but it does not avail me that they have tried it. If I have any experience which I think valuable, I am sure to reflect that this my mentors said nothing about. Are you still awake? No response. Okay, I'll just read a little bit more. Okay, I like this paragraph. Sleep well, child. I know you're not a child, but I really like saying that. Sleep well, child. Okay, here we go. One farmer says to me, "You cannot live on vegetable food solely, for it furnishes nothing to make bones with." And so he religiously devotes part of his day to supplying his system with the raw materials of bones, walking all the while he talks behind his oxen, which, with vegetable made bones, jerk him and his lumbering plough along in spite of every obstacle. Some things are really necessaries of life in some circles, the most helpless and diseased, which in others are luxuries merely, and in others still are entirely unknown. I do like this next paragraph, so I'll try to read a couple more paragraphs to you, okay? Then I'll be on my way. The whole ground of human life seems to some to have been gone over by their predecessors, both the heights and the valleys, and all things to have been cared for. According to Evelyn, the wise Solomon prescribed ordinances for the varied distances of trees, and the Roman praetors have decided how often you may go into your neighbor's land to gather the acorns which fall on it without trespass, and what share belongs to that neighbor. Hippocrates has even left directions how we should cut our nails, that is, even with the ends of the fingers, neither shorter nor longer. Undoubtedly, the very tedium and ennui, which presume to have exhausted the variety and the joys of life, are as old as Adam. But man's capacities have never been measured, nor are we to judge of what he can do by any precedents, so little has been tried. Whatever have been thy failures hitherto, be not afflicted, my child, for who shall assign to thee what thou hast left undone? Okay, last paragraph. I think that we may safely trust a good deal more than we do. We may waive just so much care of ourselves as we honestly bestow elsewhere. Nature is as well adapted to our weakness as to our strength. The incessant anxiety and strain of some is a well-nigh incurable form of disease. We are made to exaggerate the importance of what work we do, yet how much is not done by us? What if we had been taken sick? How vigilant we are, determined not to live by faith if we can avoid it, all the day long on the alert. At night we unwillingly say our prayers and commit ourselves to uncertainties. So thoroughly and sincerely are we compelled to live, reverencing our life and denying the possibility of change. This is the only way, we say, but there are as many ways as there can be drawn right high from one center. All change is a miracle to contemplate, but it is a miracle which is taking place every instant. I like that. Confucius says, to know that we know what we know, and that we do not know what we do not know. That is true knowledge. When one man has reduced a fact of the imagination to be a fact to his understanding, I foresee that all men will at length establish their lives on that basis. It's just getting so much better. I don't know if you're awake or not, but I just had a revelation just now. How it said that change is a miracle. What a way to look at life. Anyhow, life is always changing every single day. Yeah, we try to hold on to certain beliefs or certain pains and angst in the past, and we use those things to demote ourselves and discourage ourselves, and we create stories that hurt ourselves every day. But if we accept that change is not only inevitable, but change is a miracle, and if we may be adaptable and look upon our fresh day each day and say, okay, that's fine. What kind of magic can I create from this? This change could be a blessing in disguise, as this every day is new and unpredictable. What kind of magic, what kind of path can I carve and create from this? And in that frame of mind, my sweets, miracles occur. What a life, what a trip life can be. Nothing will ever be the same, nor should we want to hold on to it. But let's just see what kind of miracles we can create from it. It is an adventure unique to each one of us all. No need to compare. Just focus on creating the magic. Big hug. Now I know that wasn't exactly what Walden was about, but that was a very nice insight I had just now, so good night, my sweets. Thank you for letting me share this book with you. Thank you so much to my Patreons for supporting this video. OTech, JLX, FBMDN, Kevin, Matt, Fenrir, and Joshua. And don't forget to check my Patreon in the link in the description, where you can get wave audio files, your name in the credits, and tingle bracelets. And thank you again for being here. It is the best support.